Holy cow! You got that right? This week's parsha we talk about a holy cow, or the para aduma, the red heifer, an enigmatic law about how to purify somebody who has become tum'at or impure through taking a red cow and burning it and things with the ashes, a whole odd procedure. Now, holy cow is right. You know, when I first moved to Humboldt, some of my friends asked me, what are you going to do in Humboldt? You're going to be the rabbi for the cows? Now, actually, one of the first Jewish people that I met in Humboldt, Reuven Uri ben David, alav shalom, he used to say that the cows are outstanding in their fields. And it's true. You know, cows are wonderful and we all love cows. But what is the deal with taking a red cow and purity and impurity? So first of all, we need to understand, what does it mean to be alive? And what does it mean to be pure? God is holy and pure, and the very definition of life. And therefore, connection to God, connection to Hashem, is life. And separation or distance is death. And so, when God introduced the concept of tumas mes, the ultimate death and separation from godliness, Moshe's face, niskarkum upanav, it says, he got confused, his face crinkled up, he didn't understand how is a person possibly going to be purified from such a horrific impurity. And so Hashem introduced the concept of a red cow, and then Moshe went, aha! Now I get it. What's the deal with the red cow? You see, within each and every one of us, we have our human side, our godly side. We also have our animalistic side, the side of us that we're a primate. We are animals. And we take the red cow. Now, red signifies anger or strong emotions. And you work with it and you purify the different elements of your animal soul, and you work with the emotions and you use the tools that the Torah gives you to learn how to exercise self-control and reanalyze how we're supposed to think about the different scenarios that are getting us upset, and adopting positivity bias and see the godly intervention and everything. And by doing so, we're working with our inner cow, so to speak, the emotions, the red, and we're transforming it into what then the ashes from the cow would be mixed with water and used for purification to purify not just the godly side of ourselves, but ultimately the godly soul comes all the way down into the world and deals with a physical body in order to elevate the animal side of our being. Now, very interestingly, when it came to somebody actually preparing the cow for this process, the person who went through and did that procedure, they themselves would become tameh, defiled. And really, working on ourselves entails not just focusing on our own animal soul and working with the different emotions, but ultimately, working with ourselves means not being so self-centered and focused on oneself. You see, because even if it's about spiritual enlightenment and pursuit and working on my emotions, if it's still just me, then it's ultimately just a higher form of the same animal selfishness. And the Torah is coming to tell us the key to how to refine and purify, and that's by even willing to sacrifice not just your own physical comforts and needs in order to help out another, but even your own spiritual purity. You put that aside, you go outside of the camp, and you prepare the red heifer, the para aduma, to bring purity to another, which in our terms means that we're willing to forgo even our own extra spiritual pursuits and put ourselves in harm's way in order to really have a positive impact on someone else. So this self-transcendence, where we're not just focused on our own needs, is what the para aduma is all about. When the para aduma is introduced, it says, Zois chukas ha-Torah. This is the fundamental principle of the entire Torah. The Torah is there to help us reach beyond the personal, beyond the self, and touch the transcendence of God. Now, that might sound scary, because if you're just selflessly devoted to helping others, you might think, oh, what am I going to get out of that? Here's the key. If it's just about what am I going to get out of being selfless, that's not called being selfless. But don't worry, because when it comes to worrying about yourself, this is an expression of not the ultimate depth of who you really are deep down. Really, at the core of our being, we are a godly soul. And that godly soul is transcendent and does care about the general even more than the particular. God is all-encompassing, divine unity. There's nothing outside of it. And when we can tap into that drive that we have to transcend our own lives, our own self, in order to selflessly help another, that is true expression of who you really are and what it really means to be free. This Shabbos is a special date, not just because it's the 4th of July, but in the Hasidic calendar, it's Yud Beis Tammuz, the 12th day of Tammuz, the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Chabad Rebbe, got released from jail. He was locked up for the big crime of what? Spreading Judaism in communist Russia, of course. Now, they didn't want people to have the freedom to have that transcendence and experience of devotion to God that goes outside of oneself. They really didn't care so much if somebody in the privacy of their own home kept their Jewish traditions and lit their Shabbat candles. They cared mostly about people sharing the warmth and beauty and the transcendence of Judaism with another, selflessly devoting themselves to helping someone else, which is why the Frierdiker Rebbe was their key target, because he was someone who devoted his entire being to helping another. And this is, where was he sent after he was released from prison? To America, on to the new world, the new shores. You see, it's actually quite ironic that it lines up with the 4th of July. The 4th of July, President John Adams, the second president of the United States, said that this day ought to be commemorated as a day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. Besides for having a nice barbecue and lighting a bonfire, fireworks. I actually saw a whole bunch of fireworks got confiscated in Eureka before the 4th of July. And besides for it just being, a lot of fire, there is something to the expression of freedom. Now, what does it truly mean to be free? You and I know that freedom is not just a lack of oppression from the outside, that there's nobody coming and taking your things or taking your life or forcing you to do labor that you don't want to do, that you don't voluntarily agree with. But freedom ultimately means the ability to express your truest self. And that means that we cannot be content with just living life for our own selves. Because, as we mentioned, that's not the truest element of who we really are. But the truest element of who we really are is that transcendence, that ability to go beyond just what it is that I need, both physically and spiritually, and selflessly devote ourselves to helping another, just like those who prepared the red cow for purification were putting their own purity on the line. They became tum'at. Similarly, we shouldn't think, that person is on a whole different caliber. He's not somebody who really has a connection to me. And therefore, if I go and I talk to him, I'm going to end up getting caught up in the negativity that he's entrenched in, but rather to recognize that this Zois Chukas HaTorah, this is what the entire Torah is about. Like Rabbi Akiva says, V'ahavta l'reyacha kamoicha, loving your fellow as you love yourself. Zeh kol haTorah kula, this is the entire Torah. V'idach parishahu, and the rest is just commentary. The idea that we could selflessly devote ourselves to loving and caring for another, this is the entire Torah, and this is the message of the holy cow, the red heifer. Shabbos.